Statistically speaking, you and I know people in our life that are dealing with a sexual addiction, or at the very least, a full-blown sexual syndrome on its way to becoming an addiction. That's just reality. Now, we may not be aware of it, and you know what? That person in our life may not be aware of it either. Perhaps that person is you. I don't know. Let's explore this topic of sexual addiction and flourishing syndromes in our life that make their way towards an addiction. Again, I refer to you to Dr. Patrick Carnes, a foremost authority on this area, and most any book he's written on the subject of sexual addiction will help you. Now, what happens in our life, because of the neurochemical dopamine rush and some other things we've talked about in other videos, our tolerance level for sexual stimulation increases. Not unlike alcohol. When you build up a tolerance to alcohol, we become desensitized to its effects, and we need more of it to get the same result. Our culture is saturated with sexuality. We're overly exposed to sexuality, and when you add to that pornography and sexual behavior that's deviant, what happens is we tend to want more and more as human beings. The problem with that is our sexual deviance increases, as do our desires for fetishes and other things, until we start amping up the exposure to inappropriate sexuality to the point where we have to meet the same need over and over and over. Outwardly, we become more curious and more exploratory in our desires. We take on more partners as human beings, and the result is outwardly we look content, but inwardly become emptier and emptier. And what happens when you feel empty? You go back to the very thing you think is giving you fulfillment, but in actuality is not, and the cycle of shame and behavior and guilt and repetitiveness of sexual deviance begins to increase. Now, why do I bring this up? Because I deal with it in people's lives that sit in my office, and I know that they're dealing with this issue, and they finally come to say, you know what? I didn't think I was, but quite frankly, I am. Here's a principle. Whatever you focus on in life will likely become more pervasive in your life, have a greater impact in your life. If sexuality is something you become obsessed with, it will probably take over your life. On a physical level, on a spiritual level, on a relational level, a social level, and on a self-esteem level. So why the video? Well, let's start talking results here. Let's start talking solutions. I want to encourage you to Google Dr. Patrick Carnes and sexual addiction and the word assessment. If you have any inkling whatsoever that you maybe have gone down this road way too far and you want to know how to pull back and get your life back, then I want to encourage you to take an assessment. Find an online assessment. Dr. Carnes provides one in his book for you to begin to ascertain what your behavior matches up with in terms of addiction and/or syndrome. This is in the area of pornography and live sexual relationships. What is it that you need to do to get some help to break this cycle that is you don't own, it owns you? A behavior you don't do, it dictates to you. You don't own, it owns you. And if you're not at that point, you may be on your way. And it's worth a time out to say, hey, listen, maybe I need to think objectively about what I'm dealing with. Sex Anonymous groups is another website I would encourage you to go to. There are Sex Anonymous groups throughout the country, throughout the world. Why don't you take the opportunity to look for those groups in your area and maybe attend a meeting? You might find you know some people that are already there. You're not going to get better and you're not going to heal alone. What you're going to end up finding out is you need other people to share that experience, strength, and hope, but you're also going to need a relationship with God, because ultimately that's what you're looking for. You're looking for an intimate, meaningful, loving, forgiving, compassionate, emotional relationship with a God who died for you. Until you get to that, we're just trying to make this thing up as we go. But in the meantime, let's think of a way not to have the prison or the bondage that we have by a sexual addiction. It's good to evaluate, it's good to look, it's good to get information, and it's good to be inspired. I wish you well, and I pray for you as you explore those options. As always, we at LifePoints are here to be a resource for you. Let us know what you think, what your questions you might have. If you need some direction in getting some help in any of these areas, you contact us, and we will be in touch.